Hello, welcome back to the SwansCast podcast. Hopefully it'll be more positive today. So got some good things to talk about this week, and I've got Ben to join me as always. So welcome back, Ben.
Glad to be here. Standing up, as you can see on video.
Yeah, standing up, and got a nice new stand-up desk there, I see, for your little setup at the house. So stretching those legs this evening. So obviously Swans got a couple of wins under the belt. Maybe you brought some positive energy with you, and you went on the Watford preview that you went on with the lads from the Do Not Scratch Your Eyes podcast. I'm sure you had a good time over there.
Oh, it was so much fun, honestly. Give the podcast a watch if you can. But I know it's a bit retrospective now. The Watford games coming on. They were a lot of fun. Those boys I really enjoyed.
Yeah, I mean, I did a preview with one of them as well. If you ever watch any of our match previews, the one I would ever recommend is when we have one with Watford, because them lads are very, very good. If you ever listen to the TalkSport radio show they do once a week, that features some of the championship podcasts we work with. It's the same group that kind of run it, or one of them kind of runs it, and I can't remember which one it is now. But what were their names again on there?
Don't put me on the spot, Luke. It's a blissful dream at this
point. I had Pete on the other day, but my mind's gone blank. But they're a good laugh. You should go check that out. But yeah, usually when I speak to them, they tell me how bad Watford are all the time, how we're going to win, it's going to be easy, this, that, the other. And then they come and beat us, whether it's them deservingly beating us or not, it doesn't matter. They come and get a result. And you went on them on the podcast with them this time, not me. And it seems like it went the other way around. But actually, we did deserve to win the game, and quite convincingly so. So 3 games to discuss, that being one of them. Watford at home, of course, the last one. We've got Millwall at home to discuss, which probably won't talk too much about it, but we'll touch on it a little bit. And Oxford away as well, which Ben actually made the trek down to. Good away day.
Brilliant away day. Got a bit stuck on the M4 on the way home, but we were in a good mood. We got the win coming home with us, so it wasn't too bad.
Was that roadworks or crash or what?
Oh, it was a bad crash, I think. I don't know what the fallout of all that was, but yeah, we were stuck in Bridgend for about 2 hours.
I think I saw some actually on Wales Online about something by Bridgend, so didn't really look great, unfortunately. But yeah, like really good win on the road. I'm gutted I didn't. His one I penciled in earlier in the season, and it's just been a bit caught up in work this year or this season so far that I haven't even entertained an away day, and a bit gutted now after the result that I didn't make the journey to this one. But there we go, it happens. I'm glad that you enjoyed, and I'm sure anyone else that went also enjoyed. So if you did go to Oxford, maybe you saw Ben and you said hello, but let us know in the comments how your match day experience was, and see how it sort of stacks up against some of the other away days. Oxford's probably a ground that, in the league at least, Swansea probably haven't visited for quite some time. I
think it was 20 years in the league.
Yeah, I know we had a couple of cup games that we don't want to talk about. John Drew Shalvey one is the one that sticks to memory. But yeah, anyway, nice to have a more recent and better memory. Should we start at Millwall then, briefly?
Get out of the way.
I don't think it's too much I want to talk about it. Maybe if we'd done a podcast after the game, I probably would have said a little bit more. But I think, obviously, if we're carrying on from the last podcast, where we've spoken about the games against, what was it, Sheffield Wednesday and
Blackburn,
that we were quite poor performance-wise in, which was not necessarily what was consistent before, where we seemed to be okay, especially in the first halves, not taking advantage, not making the chances that we should have for the amount of ball and dominating the game sort of that we were doing. And we were kind of suffering as a result of our lack of goals and creativity that way. But I guess the lack of goals and creativity continued, but we kind of lost our confidence and the whole performance seemed to get a little bit worse. It seemed against Millwall at home, at least the dominance and better showing came back, but without the goals, we still didn't manage to find the net. And from what I had it described to me, very much smash and grab performance from Millwall.
Yeah, I mean, if you take the 90 minutes as a whole, it very much fitted in with the prior games, Stoke, Blackburn, Sheffield Wednesday. They all kind of look the same. I think you could argue in this game there was a little bit more creativity, particularly in the first half, but definitely didn't deserve to lose. But it's not a performance that we came away and went, "Oh, that's it. We played really well there. It's been undeserving." Still played bad. It's just Millwall were even worse. So it was definitely smash and grab. I think they had the 2 shot target Millwall. The only real
Yeah,
genuine chance was the goal right at the end. It was a game actually where Vigouroux's distribution, where normally, it's been one of the traits of the season, has been impeccable, as we saw in the Watford and Oxford games as well, to be honest. It just wasn't there this game. Just, one bad game. It happens, but it led to the goal, unfortunately. And yeah,
if anything, it highlights how much we have relied on him in certain games this season. We've had a good defensive record, but this shows how much of a part of that he's been. I was talking, obviously, I've just recorded the Burnley match preview, which will probably be out before this podcast. So if you haven't already seen it, go and check that out. And the lads there were basically, obviously, Vigouroux came from Burnley, and they didn't necessarily have a lot to say about him because he didn't really play for them. But they were quite interested in how he's getting on, and it was just interesting to talk about how we've gone to replace Rushworth, and it's only taken, 13, 14 matches for him to be quite well thought of here. I think it's definitely a positive signing, so we can give him an off game. There was a couple from Rushworth at the start of last season where he looked very dodgy on the ball. His distribution wasn't always there. I think Woodman, when he was here, he had periods where he was getting a bit of criticism, maybe a little bit unfairly so for his age as well. But there were times where that was happening. So I do think Vigouroux was probably one of the strongest goalkeepers we've had for a while, and that's saying something considering how good Rushworth was last season.
Yeah, I mean, maybe Fisher aside, we've got a really good string of goalkeepers. It was difficult to come in here and, meet the expectations, I suppose.
You didn't have to throw that shade then. You could have just not mentioned him.
I don't mean to single people out, but it's making the point, like, whereas the number 9 position, for example, for the Swans, we don't really have much of a bar, do we? In terms of, like, I know we've had Perot, who created loads of opportunities for himself, but we don't sign strikers expecting them to come in and score 15 goals a season. Whereas in goals, we have had a consistent standard of player, I guess is what I'm saying. So when we had free agent Vigouroux come in, third choice of Burnley, never made it onto the pitch, only real experience in League Two. He looked sensible, but did I think he'd be best signing of the summer, one of the best keepers in the league so far? No, he's exceeded expectations, hasn't he?
Yeah, it definitely has. I think he's done very well, to be fair, and I probably wouldn't swap him for Rushworth now, I'll be honest.
As crazy as it sounds, yeah, purely because he's permanent, doesn't he? Whereas Rushworth was alone.
Yeah, and I think just we're going to get onto the Watford game, of course, but while we're on Vigouroux, like, it's funny we start talking about him for this one mistake that probably cost us a point, but we let it slide, I guess, for the rest of the season he's had. But some of the commanding takes he made against Watford in the corner area, from a corner, I should say, it's just having a goalkeeper who's willing and commanding like that, and obviously he's got the frame and the height to do it a little bit, but still need the confidence and trust in your ability to just run into the crowded area of bodies everywhere, stick your hands in the air, and just pluck that ball out of thin air before it gets anywhere near anyone's head. Like, that level of reassurance for your defense must be invaluable for them to just not to relax and have an easy ride, but it must make your life easier and ease any pressure, I guess.
Yeah, and you can tell he's definitely developed a good relationship with Darling Angabango now. I think obviously it's an issue going forward, the fact that they're both out of contract, the 2 centre backs, but for now, that trio, set pieces, I always feel secure with the 3 of them now.
Yeah, a bit worried about perhaps when an injury comes in somewhere there, but hopefully that doesn't happen and they don't get tired as well for the rest of the season. Be interesting to see what happens if one of them does have to drop out for whatever reason. But yeah, the Millwall game, I think what I was going to summarize it as, just basically, I think Luke Williams, you can see you've started to address some of the issues we've had in recent games. Maybe we didn't quite get there on the pitch, but you could definitely see they were trying to. And it was a bit worrying afterwards. I think if we'd done this afterwards, because we hadn't played necessarily as bad as we had in the last 2, but then we ended up still losing the game. When we were like on that barren run, no goals scored, it didn't matter if we played all right or played poorly, and we were still just not picking up results. in this game, you could argue we played okay and didn't get results. So then you start worrying, okay, well, how do we get a result then? But luckily, if we move on to the next game, which is Oxford away, so this is the one for you to discuss, really. I haven't made the journey. Put that to bed, actually, and got 2 goals. So barely could score one. I think it's only the second or third league game this season we scored more than 1 goal. So do you want to talk about your Oxford day?
Yeah, I mean, just checking back, we just said we scored more than one against Preston. I think that was
And
it.
Coventry.
Oh, right. Okay, yeah. There we go. Hiding on my sheet, I do have the results up. Yeah, brilliant away day. Took 2 hours to get there. Get there though, and the first thing you see is the lineups, and Cooper's not in the squad, and we were like, "What's going on there?"
Yeah, I missed this though. When did that actually get announced that he got crocked?
When you say crocked,
Ollie Cooper. He was on the bench for this one, was he actually?
I don't think. No, I don't think he's in the squad.
No, he's out for 3 months, Ollie Cooper, isn't he? With
yeah,
that's what I meant, crocked. Sorry.
All right, yeah. But no, I don't think there was like an official
It
announcement.
just kind of went under the radar, didn't it?
Yeah, the guy in front of me in the stadium just knew though. He said, "Yeah, I saw him down Morvo with a boot on yesterday. He's out for 3 months." He said. I was like, well, you already had low expectations for the Oxford games. That lowered them even more. But then they come out on the pitch, and all of a sudden, it looked pretty standard at first. It looked like the same. Okay, we're going to dominate the ball. At least now we're starting to get into wider areas, try and get in behind. You can see there was a little bit more intent. Slice of good fortune, a little bit of the goal because the ball gets it by, which is a good pass, by the way. But the Oxford defender just deflects it sort of inwards towards goal, which gives Ronald a better position to cut back. But for Potnick, took up a good position, 1-0. And from there, we were just comfortable right up until they pulled one back, to be honest. Brilliant goal from Bianchini. You could probably say they were very close to 2-2. It's the truth of it. I don't know if you've watched the highlights. They had a header, a goal that, whistled past the post. And it was so close. Really should have scored, if we're being honest. It would have been unjust. And there's sort of a defining moment in the season potential there. Because if that goes in and we finally get a 2-goal lead and we squander it right at the end like that, I think morale would have been really, really different going into the Watford game. And it would have put more pressure on that game. But instead, we come out, 2-1 victory, probably the correct scoreline for the game. But again, limited them to very little, just like we did Millwall, just like we did Watford, just like we did Sheffield Wednesday, to be honest. I know those game performances weren't good, but we still weren't like leaking major chances, were we, in any of them, if we're being honest. And now we get to talk about the fact we've won games, but also that solidified defence is sort of still there somehow.
Yeah, it's a good win away from home. I think Oxford have been quite decent at home this season. They've been one of the teams that have come up from League One and kind of done well. So as much as you always, I think, naively, there's an expectation in there when you're in any league. The teams that come up are always seen as games you target as points, really.
Yeah.
I know kind of last season with Ipswich, they broke that mold quite early on. But generally speaking, again, naively, I think you could argue even disrespectfully in some cases. I just think every team in the league generally looks at teams that have come up as a chance to get points. And it's probably fair because ultimately they were in a lower league last year. They got to build into a new league. They obviously also target other teams as their points, but I think, especially when you're in relegation battle, then you target the teams around you for the wins. But they've had a good start and they've been really quite decent. So with the form that we were on, I think for us to go there and be so dominant, and if you look at the momentum graph as well on SofaScore, which is what I often use, I can pull up on the screen in a second. We were absolutely dominant, and momentum graph doesn't show everything. It doesn't stop a team having a smash and grab, as you said, very nearly could have been. But yeah, here's the momentum graph. So blue is Swansea and green is Oxford. And that just shows the momentum and shift of where the ball is, I guess, like who's attacking, what part of the pitch you're playing in, and all that sort of thing. And if you're looking at this graph, obviously, if you're listening on audio, you can't see it, but it's pretty much, I don't think it would be unfair to say, about 95% in Swansea's favour for the whole match.
Not far off.
And that's not just in Swansea's favour. It's a bar chart, it is. So you've got a middle ground, and then above the line in green will be for Oxford, and then the higher the bar, the more they're in control for that given period of time. I don't know what the breakdown is in each bar. I don't know whether it's like 2-minute intervals or something like that, or 1-minute intervals. I can't quite make out how many. I'm not gonna go into try and figure that out right now. But they're in a couple of minute intervals regardless. And then if you look at the other side, which is the blue, which is going downwards, that's Swansea, and they most of the graph is downwards, and then you get a variation of how far down essentially. But a lot of it is quite significantly in Swansea's favour. So maybe 2-1 flat as Oxford a little bit. If I wasn't watching the match and I'm just looking at the stats, and I know they don't tell a full picture, that graph tells me that Swansea were in total domination of this game.
Yeah, I think that's a fair statement. I also think where we've talked about maybe we target the newly promoted teams as opportunities to win games. I think Oxford probably took us for granted a little bit, weirdly. Obviously, they had good home form. They were missing Cameron Brannigan in midfield, which is their best player. He's like the closest thing they have to like Mac Grimes. So, a big part of like dictating the play, winning the midfield battle. But also, we talked a lot about the last few weeks, even the last couple of months now, to be honest. Our form has been the same for so long, how we become such a predictable side to play. And all teams, regardless of who they were approaching us in the same fashion. Letting us have time and space in the first half, keeping it to 0-0, then pushing more in the second half, pressing us a bit more, and then waiting for a chance to come and just, walking out with an easy 1-0 victory, which is what a lot of teams have been doing. This went the other way. We started well. We actually scored and capitalized on our, possession, our dominance. They had to change their game plan then to being 1-0 down. It's not something they were expecting.
Yeah.
And I talked about it briefly, I think on Twitter. Josh Key inverted as normal into midfield. It had much more of an effect in this game. Matt Grimes, Franco, obviously, but also Joe Allen. He's down as a number 10 on SofaScore on the screen. He probably wasn't, to be honest with you. It was more like Matt Grimes was deeper. Franco and Allen were a little bit further forward. But you had those three, really comfortable players on the ball in midfield. Josh Key inverting inwards as well. We always had one extra man in midfield, and whoever that man was, it was usually Key or Franco more than anyone. They were just picking up and driving for the ball because they had a good 10 yards of space ahead of them. Then all of a sudden you're releasing Ronald and Peart-Harris at the fullbacks, and they were in one-on-one situations getting in behind. This is where all the chances were coming from. Oxford just really weren't ready to go 1-0 down. It's similar to how we aren't ever really ready to go 1-0 down either. So once we did go ahead, you were hoping and praying the second goal would come, and it did. Brilliant goal, by the way. Bianchini, the movement across the front line, off the bench. So yeah, it's nice. We played well, deserved to win, and we did. It's as simple as that, really, isn't it?
Yeah, Bianchini assisted by Franco, who got robbed of an assist, I think, against Watford as well. To be fair, hell of a ball he played. Someone knocked it on, I think, or something. I can't remember. But Franco should have got an assist. That's all I know. Franco should have got an assist against Watford. Doesn't really matter because we scored a goal, but I just think it's showing the ball qualities he has now and the stamp that he's having on the game. You mentioned a couple of things there. I didn't know it was on you before. There's a new feature on SofaScore. You can actually look at how the goals played out. So that's quite interesting.
Cool.
Yeah, so nice little graphic there if you are watching on YouTube. Again, sorry for those listening. I can't really explain this to you. So Ben has kind of done a little bit of a good job explaining the goals there. But yeah, let's talk about the selection a little bit. So Joe Allen, I think it was his first start in the league of the season. Not really playing as a 10, as it kind of makes out in this graphic. But Grimes sitting, you said, and maybe two more further forward midfielders.
Yeah, it wasn't too rigid, but there were times early on, particularly where Matt Grimes was doing the thing of he's dropping between Cabango and Darling to make a back three, let the fullbacks push on. We were like, okay, it's the exact same thing again. You understand it a bit more away from home, but it's become this sort of thing, hasn't it, where it's perceived as negative when Grimes does that because we're lacking creativity so much further forward that we sort of need him to be higher up the pitch. But in the end, it did work out in this game, if we're being honest, and it was just basically when Josh Key was coming in. I know I've said that once already, but we knew when to defend. There were times where Key and Timon were getting a bit caught out, but you see with the momentum chart on the screen there weren't many times where we were getting caught out and it was leading to Oxford scoring. They would dispossess us at times, and then they'd know the gaps are out wide and try and exploit. But we just managed to delay them enough and get back in our shape enough to a point where they didn't really get a shot at goal off the back of it. So yeah, we didn't really have a 10 in this game, if we're being honest. It was just a lot of number 8s, and whichever number 8 was free would be the one that drives the ball and tries to release Ronaldo Peart-Harris. Also, the Potnick is worth mentioning. Best game so far. I don't know if you can look at his touches. Usually it's about 10. I'm guessing it's more than 10 in this game. It felt like a lot more.
14.
14? Really? Okay, well, there was one moment.
Many beers.
There was one moment in the game in particular, right, where I can't remember who dinked the ball into him in the box, but he had a touch in the box, which was actually red. I'm not talking about the goal either. And he sort of, the best way I can describe it is like Zlatan. I know it sounds stupid to say, but he sort of jumped and chested it whilst in midair and dropped it down, killed it dead, played someone else into the game. He looks a lot fitter, a lot sharper. And 14 touches, that surprised me, if I'm honest. It felt like he was a lot more involved.
I think maybe 14 touches isn't as, I don't know, it was saying 60 odd minutes, I think, until he got subbed.
He did get taken off. But we were all shocked when he did come off, to be honest. That's not necessarily it's not necessarily just because Bianchini came on, but everyone was a bit shocked. Like, he's literally doing everything for us. He must have been doing a lot off the ball, and it was like implying to us clearly that it felt like he was touching it more than he was. But nevertheless, brilliant. I know it's easy to say because he got the goal. Like, would I be talking like, oh, he had a brilliant game if he didn't get on the score sheet? But he did. Let's be fair. I think he deserved to. Over that performance, I feel like he would have been hard done by if he didn't get on the score sheet.
He nearly got another goal against Watford as well, inches away from a low cross that he basically would have tapped in had he connected to it. Unfortunately, wanted to be good ball in from Peart-Harris for that one. But yeah, good to see him kind of performing, and he backed it up with another start, didn't he? Which is good. I think he needs a run in the team, and maybe he's getting that now. Maybe a little bit helped by Cooper's injury, but if it helps him get up to speed and confidence and score for us, then I'm all for it, to be honest. That's good then. So obviously, Joe Allen in midfield, he didn't remain in the team for Watford, which perhaps is expected with his age and fitness issues. Did he have an impact here?
Yeah, I mean, he kept things calm, didn't he? But like you say, because of his age, his injury record, he is a 60-minute player, and he's certainly not a Saturday, Tuesday player. You get an hour out of him a week, probably, don't you? Which is fine. It's a good option to have. To be honest, there aren't many moments in the game where I remember him doing something in particular, but that's the way Joe Allen's always been. He does the quiet work, doesn't he? Having him and Franco there, I do feel like it could be a bit of a cheat code if they can both stay fit, because so far this season it has been either or. I don't think anyone really thought about the idea of them playing together, but it did really work in this game. Maybe in particular it works for away games because you haven't necessarily got that creativity that like breaks down a defense there, and the two of them have you, but you do win midfield battles, and away from home in particular that is particularly crucial, like it was in this game.
Sky, or one of the commentators on Sky on Tuesday against Watford, when Joe Allen came on off the bench, called him a reincarnated Leon Britton, or words to that effect. Or basically, because I think when Joe Allen first came on the scene, he was playing alongside Britton. And I think he was basically saying it's like having another person who's the same player. It's like having two Leon Brittons on the pitch. What do you make of that comparison? I mean, I think Joe Allen's more of his own player than another Leon Britton, and that's not a negative thing.
Yeah, they directly compared Joe Allen to Leon Britton, did they?
Yeah, you basically said Joe Allen is another Leon Britton. Like, he does the same job, plays football the same way, glides around the pitch the same.
Joe Allen's a lot more high risk on the ball, and he's a lot more reckless in the challenge, I think is fair to say, isn't it? Not to say Britton would never pick up Buckins, but it makes me laugh when everyone says that about Grimes, he only passes sideways and backwards. I think genuinely that was a fair-ish comment for Leon Britton. That's what we needed from him. But compare that to Joe Allen. When Joe Allen comes on the pitch, he does always he only really goes forward. It's very rare you see Joe Allen facing backwards. It's not really in his DNA. So, yeah, it's not really the best of comparisons. I can see why they say it, But
I just found it interesting. I don't know whether it was just like, I'm going to compare it to this person because I don't really watch Swansea that much, and I don't know that much about their players. But he passes the ball. He passed the ball. Yeah, we'll say the similar. I just thought it was an interesting comment to pick up on. Okay, looking at the wings, Peart-Harris moved out to the wing. Obviously, being injured has again facilitated. We needed a different option there. Tried a few things. I think Abdullah Bianchini not quite hit the ground running when we've put them in those positions, at least to start off in recent games. Peart-Harris looks like maybe he's been coming into his own a little bit more, and I think especially against Watford, which we'll get on to. But him and Ronald here, like, good impact.
Yeah, I mean, Ronald, just to get a direct goal contribution, he's going to be feeling very good about himself. He didn't get heavily involved in the game. I feel like, same with Peart-Harris, it's not that they were on the ball all the time, but when they were on the ball, they were in more threatening situations than we used to see them. Like, normally, recently, when they're picking up the ball, they got two defenders in front of them, they got their back to goal, they end up doing a hopeless cross into the box. In this game, because of the way we were sort of manipulating their midfield to get a free man, we were creating 1v1 scenarios for them, and they were able to get in behind their fullback a couple of occasions, both of them. So I think if you look at their touches, their passes, their crosses, the numbers are probably similar, but the threat that they provided, it was more significant in this game. That was plain to see.
I think, considering the length of time on the pitch, Peart-Harris actually had a lot more involvement to go into this, which maybe is a bit of a surprise.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at the expected assists on Ronald, it's 0.85. I think almost all of that's just going to be from that one chance he created for Popotnik, which he obviously put away. The numbers on Peart-Harris, that, like, he didn't quite create the same number of shots on goal, clearly, just looking at him. I mean, 0.02 expected assists, and it's not up to much, is it? But he was able, like I say, to get in the 1v1 situations, and he did look confident. He actually looked like he was quicker than his fullback. He looked like he could take a man on, which isn't really a quality we've seen from him so far. And I didn't get the chance to see the Watford game, but by the sounds of it, he was doing that and more in that game again. So fitness, maybe, confidence, probably more so. It's leading to some better performances.
Yeah, I'll get onto them when we get to Watford, but I thought they were both very good and probably the best I've seen either of them this season. Okay, we're nearly finished with this one, but I just want to ask mainly about probably Bianchini and Christie. Start on Bianchini, someone that has had a fair share of criticism since his signing. Maybe the fee was a bit bigger than what it should have been. We haven't really seen anything from him to suggest that's a fair deal. Do you think he showed a glimpse of why we might have paid for him? And he came on as a striker, if I'm correct.
Yeah.
I didn't realise that was a position that he could play. We were worried about, okay, if we're going to start Popotnik and Cullen now quite often together, who's going to be the next person to come off the bench? Because there isn't anyone there to come on as a striker, yeah? Obviously, Bianchini has been the one that's doing it. How did he get on in that role? You said after you watched him, you messaged us saying his movement was very good, and obviously got a goal. So is this maybe something that we need to consider going forward?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I was aware that he played up front when he was playing in the French second division. I think the reason I hadn't really put his name forward when we've been having a whole striker debate recently is just because, he's been proper struggling. There's no point getting away with it. Before this game, every time he touched the ball, he was losing it instantly. He wasn't, he didn't look like he can complete a pass, let alone a cross or shot or goal. So yeah, he was quickly becoming a bit of a scapegoat and struggling to get minutes. In this game, though, straight down the middle, for some reason, he came on, looked sharper, movement between all of the centre backs, and I'm using the phrase getting behind a lot. It's because we haven't seen it this season. We have the players probably to do it in some respect, but the movement's been shocking for the most part. He comes on, times his run across the face perfectly. Franco finds him perfectly, and the shot, right? It's one of those ones. It's pretty much the only place he could have put it. He does it first time, head down, across goal. Perfect finish, perfect celebration, hell of a knee slide he did. I'll just point that out as well. It's got to have done him the world of confidence. He desperately needed a moment like that just to spark his career, just to ignite it, to get it going. And I hope we do see it now. I'm not sure he's the sort of striker that you start like from the get-go. If I'm being honest, I do think he's, if you're going to put him up front, it is probably for the last half hour when the defense is tiring a bit. But yeah, I'd say for any game state, to be honest, if we're losing, drawing, winning, he is a good option to have there because it does peg them back a little bit. They can't get too high up the pitch because he does offer that threat in behind on the counter.
So similar to what Janelli might offer if he was playing in that position. Not that we've seen that much of him. His XG is 0.21 and obviously scored a goal. So guessing the chance wasn't necessarily a clear cut then.
Oh no, it wasn't clear cut. It was near the right side, somewhere between the penalty spot on the edge of the box on the right side, and he had to hit it first time across the face, so it's easy to get wrong. It's easy to scuff it, it's easy to sky it, it's easy to hit it straight at the keeper. But like you say, there's one place he could have put it, and he put it there. So fair play to him, because under pressure as well, he's bound to have felt the pressure there because he hasn't had many chances to score yet. You know, it's a big moment for him, definitely.
Cyrus Christie making his second Swans debut. Anything of note to talk about there? Oh, I'll tell you what Sky also said. When he came on against Watford, Sky said that he had a lot of criticism for looking a bit out of condition when he came on against Oxford. I haven't seen anything personally. I just thought it was quite an interesting comment to be made on television. But
can you check what minute he came on in against Oxford?
He's
like 5 minutes
83rd.
or so. 83rd, yeah, so 7 minutes plus added time. I mean, I'll be honest, I didn't really notice too much about the performance. It's one of those ones when you're coming off the bench as a defender to hold on to a lead, you only really get noticed if you do something wrong. He was on the pitch for the goal, so whether there's something that happened there that I missed at the time, I'm not sure. I mean, come on, he's a free agent. He's 32. He hasn't played since I want to say March because of injuries and fitness. So like, you're gonna have to give him a bit more time to really show him his true self at the minute. I don't think you can't really twist it into a bad thing that he's back. We talked a little bit earlier, I think maybe an off camera about our when it was on camera actually, the lack of centre back options. Darling and Gabango. Christie's a full back, I'm not saying otherwise. But Norton's covering for us at full back and centre back at the minute.
Yeah.
So we do need more depth there, even if it's not like a.
Yeah, I don't mind the fact that he's Euro.
But yeah, I didn't pick up on anything particularly bad in the game. I feel like did he have half hour against Watford, or did he?
Maybe a bit less. I'm not sure. I'll check now. He came on in the 76th minute, so extra 10 minutes. Yeah, came in for Norton, didn't he? So I got that 2D map thing of Oxford's goal up here. The best way I can describe it to anyone listening to this on Spotify or whatever podcast platform you listen on, if you've ever played Football Manager back in the day when they used to use the 2D map thing or the 2D match engine rather than the 3D which they use these days, if you're a classic Football Manager player, let's go back 10, 15 years, I guess. That's what it looks like, basically. That's literally what it looks like. You can put that on now in the newer games. I think you can turn it on, but
I don't mean to burst your bubble on film, but that animation has no relevance to the goal. I think it says that's a demo preview to view the goal action animation you're looking for. Download.
You're ruining my day. I'm just having to play around with what's going on here. I thought it was quite interesting, but yeah, they're all the same, aren't they?
Yeah, I mean, the goal was one of those ones in the stadium. It looked luckier than I think it actually was. It was a decently worked move. It was he received it near the edge of the box, swiveled, and just sort of stuck it down to the Guru's left and corner. There was nothing too wrong about the goal. Nothing like you really want to blame anyone individually for. I think it's just one of those. It happened quickly.
I was going to say, was there any concerns over the way that was managed? We go 2-0 up. We went 2-0 up against Coventry and immediately conceded. We didn't immediately concede here, but you're 2-0 up in the 80th minute. You think, okay, let's close the game out now. Do you have any concerns over how that was managed? And obviously after they scored to make it 2-1, you said they nearly scored and probably should have scored an equaliser. So is there any concerns there that maybe we need to look at?
I'm not too concerned about how we were between 2-0 and 2-1. I am concerned about how we were between 2-1 and the final whistle, if I'm honest. I feel like you can look at the we showed earlier, the momentum chart.
Yes, any time that they got into the game, yeah.
We properly invited pressure after the goal. If you look at the goal, that was their first chance, really, since the end of the first half. First meaningful chance, anyway. I think we did sit deep. Obviously, you could perceive Christie coming on as you get complimented for if it works, but if you bring a defender on and then you concede, and then you can't get back into the game because you don't have the personnel on, then you get asked like, why did you bring a defender on? To be honest, it's not really something that we can call a trend yet because we haven't been winning enough games to lose enough leads to say that we do it regularly yet. Like you say, it's only the second game.
No, that's fair. That's fair. And I guess like, well, we obviously won now. We've got to go to Watford now. We won that 1-0, and I don't necessarily think that was the case there. I think, like, right, so we're on Watford now. We've got the graph up again on the screen if anyone wants to have a look. You can see the momentum graph there. And I think it's quite obvious that after we score, maybe not straight away, they kind of come into the game at the end of the first half a little bit. We came out the second half actually quite good considering what's happened earlier this season. And then what grew into the game, I think, 55, 60 minutes, which has been a bit of a trend earlier in the season. But I think you'd kind of expect it when you're 1-0 up and the team need to get something at that point, and they've got nothing to lose. They've been sitting back for most of the game. Perhaps it didn't work as planned because we got a goal. So you would expect them to come out a bit. And I wouldn't say they came out and really dominated. If you compare the graph, the green on the top is Swansea, the blue on the bottom is Watford. When we were dominating and in control of the game, our bars go a lot higher than when you could argue Watford had more of the balance. It wasn't as much in their favour as it was when we were in control. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like what's clear on that chart is I think a good indication when you look at a momentum chart is look at the game at 0-0. And at 0-0, we're all over them. It's only really, like you say, I can see what you mean when you look at that chart in particular, right? Is that second half, we probably settle for 1-0 and try and hold out, which we did. But that was a common theme near the start of the season, and we were lucky against Norwich, we were lucky against Cardiff. I know we've talked about this before, to hold on to those results that we did. And then that's when it starts that's when it started to unravel a little bit then, wasn't it? Because we had that negative mindset, and then we were just losing games, like flat out. We weren't even scoring to begin with.
I just don't know if they get tired or something. Like, I think it's getting better, but I don't know how much is it taken out of them doing this high. Yeah, I think it's quite a high intensity game plan, to be fair, because it's one thing passing the ball around and keeping the ball, but when they do lose the ball, they're just desperate to get it back straight away. As part of Luke Williams' style and what he's implemented is a quick, high tempo, high press. Say you lose the ball in the midfield somewhere, they just swarm you to try and get it back. That worked really well against Watford, to be fair. It was one of the strengths. That's why we nullified them for like 75% of the game. They didn't get a look in. In the second half, when they did a little bit, they were able to get their foot on the ball a little bit. Maybe this press wasn't quite there, which maybe is more understandable when you're 60 plus minutes and tired legs started setting in the 3-game match week. Well, it's obviously midweek, the midweek game of that. But do you know what I'm trying to say? Maybe there is a bit of fitness there. I don't really know. I feel like fitness has been an issue ever since Steve Cooper left, to be honest. I don't know if we ever really got on top of it.
It's also worth pointing out as well, we have quite a limited squad. Darling, I know they're centre-backs, but Darling and Cabango don't really get a rest. Key and Timon do sometimes, but not significantly. Mac Grimes never rests. Ronald, I think he just starts every game, Ronald, because of our lack of wide options.
Franco has a rest. They played 90 minutes on the weekend and 90 minutes in this one.
Yeah. Franco has a rest here and there, but for the most part, I think it's clear to see he's struggling to keep up the intensity because of the way he plays as well. He's always subbed early, isn't he, when he does play?
Yeah.
It's only really Cullen, Vipotnik, and Peart-Harris that's on that graphic that really get rotated often. So,
And the wing backs.
Yeah, I mean, a little bit, but Norton is age. I'm not being funny.
No, but I do regularly find that Key and Timon, you'll either rotate one of them midweek or one of them will get subbed off at like 70 minutes quite often.
Yeah, he tries to, but what I mean is he doesn't have the options of fullback. I know Christie's come in and he'll build himself up, but he doesn't have the options of fullback to consistently rest these people, I guess. And I don't know what the rest of the league looks like in that respect, if I'm being honest. I don't know if we probably are, I'm assuming, in this, one of the worst teams in terms of having to rely on the same players every week.
I think there's a few struggling this season with having shorter squads than normal. I think there is a bit of it's weird because you get some teams that spend big, but I do think teams in the Championship are quite skint generally. There are teams that are overspending and they shouldn't. And it looks like, they're buying that player, why aren't we doing that? But they're not necessarily in the position that transfer might look like. Or they've sold someone to facilitate it. But I think there's quite a few that have got some youth. Look, I don't think we've done that good a job this season considering how thin our squad is, and we've spoken about this a few times on the podcast, introducing our youth players, there are a few other teams in the Championship over this season and the last few years who have done a lot better, and they have actually got some good players out of it as well. Like look at Sunderland, for example.
Yeah.
They're near the top of the league now.
The difference is they've bought so many of those young players, I guess. It's worth noting Amar Gavey's on the bench now because Ollie Cooper's injured.
Yeah, that's a massive positive.
Yeah, he's yet to actually get on the grass, though, so we'll see if he does in the coming weeks. I mean, we got Burnley and Leeds as our next two games. I'd be surprised if he featured in either of them, but after that, Derby away, Portsmouth home. It's a congested schedule coming into Christmas, so you never know, he could get on the pitch there.
Yeah, let's talk about Watford anyway. I know you didn't catch this one. You were away on a trip, I believe.
Yeah, it was fun. Yeah, I mean, it was good. It was like obviously lovely hotel. Had lots of food given to us. Was grateful for that. It's just London's so busy. It's so busy, and like everywhere you go in, and there's a tannoy system. The tannoy system's always telling you keep your belongings close, don't get robbed, and you just feel uneasy. You just want to go home then, if I'm honest. But
I don't mind it, but I don't go that often. I go at Christmas sometimes, so it's all right. It is busy though. Oh god, sorry, tired I am. It's been a long week, but yeah, let's look at the Watford games. So we got it was a 1-0 win, so clean sheet again. I think it was a solid defensive performance. I think we really did limit Watford actually to the chances that they created. I can't remember a notable save that Vigoro had to make, and I can't remember a notable chance from Watford. If I'm being totally honest, they've got some good players. Who? Well, what was the score in the last game? 6-0 or 5-0 or something?
6-2 away at Sheffield Wednesday. It is worth pointing out. I think 2 of them were pens and 4 of them were like low quality chances. So it wasn't like a battering really, but still scored 6 goals.
They still scored 6 goals, didn't they? And they're one of the highest goal scorers in the league. They scored 22 goals. If you take the 6 away, maybe it's not as good. I guess actually, if you do take the 6 away from that one game, say that's a freak result game, they're in negative goal difference, but they're sitting playoff positions, so they were, I think, when we played them. But you could argue maybe they are punching above their weight then, looking at those things.
Yeah, I mean,
I think it's around a good season.
Yeah, I mean, they were favourites to go down, one of them. So top player, but he's definitely still doing a good job. It's just, do I expect to see them in 7th come January? Probably not. No, you're probably looking more like 17th by then, the way they're going, but we'll see.
So decent attacking players as well. I thought we nullified quite well. That Georgian star was his Chakvetadze. Is that his name?
Sure.
I know the guys on the Watford podcast call him Dave, so we'll just call him Dave. He featured. He was really good in Euros in the summer. He was one of the stars of the tournament, I think. Because Georgia, obviously, one of the underdog teams that everyone loved to see do well, and they had a good run, and he was one of the big performers for them. But he didn't do anything, really. He really didn't do anything. I think they looked dangerous for 1 or 2 corners, but I was saying to you, or we mentioned it earlier actually on the podcast, Vigoro just commanded them. You talked about his distribution as well. A couple of times from that sort of situation, I think there's one clip that's going around social media of him pinging the ball out to Ronald, basically up in the opposite corner flag. Really good ball, and puts us from a defensive transition position straight into attack in the other end of the pitch, and that's something I don't think we've had, not to that extent, to get up that far up the field in an accurate manner where we can get onto it and actually start attacking. I don't think that's something we've had in a long time. So yeah, I think the whole team looked really good in this game. I don't want to get too carried away. I've been full of criticism this season. I'm not going to forget that. I don't, people thinking, oh, he's flip-flopping. Not at all. I call out what I see that's negative when it's happening. And I've asked questions of Luke Williams I was concerned all season about the attack. I've been concerned about the defence. I do think the defence is getting better. Earlier this season, I was concerned that our possession stats were masking our defending, if you like.
Yeah.
Other than, I did acknowledge, I think we had a good scatter defence. Now, the reason for having a good scatter defence was because of the chances that we were conceding mostly on the transition. But I think we've got better at that. But I think that might just be part of the team gelling and playing together more, and some of the new signings. Like Franco's in the middle; he's had a really good season, but I guess players still have to adapt to him and get used to him as well. Generally, the defensive midfield area has been more stable, I think. And when we have lost the ball, they've been in a good position to retrieve it back quite quick. As I mentioned earlier on, that was one of the strengths I thought from us in this game. But if you go to the other side, now it's too soon to say our attack is fixed. It's 2 games where we scored 2 goals and we didn't score for 5 before that. Okay, so not getting carried away. But all I asked for during that period when we weren't scoring, I never said Luke Williams out. I just said like he needs to start answering some of these questions, and I was giving him a lot of stick for it. Fair enough, I was. But I said, show us that you're trying to address it and show us some other ideas that you look like we're going to score a different way. I was calling out what we were doing, and I thought we were too one-dimensional going out wide, and there was nothing going in the middle. There was only one striker to aim for. He won't get in the game. All this, I've said it all before. But I do think he's showing signs that some of those problems are getting resolved. So he's trying other things. Part of it might be the enforced playing the 2 strikers. But I noticed when we were going forward, it seemed more like a 4-2-4 going forward. Like Cullen was kind of going up alongside for Potnick quite often. He might have just been slightly deeper, but it wasn't like a cam deeper. Do you know what I mean? He was still pushing on more of a striker as a second forward. And obviously you had the 2 wide players. So it looked more like a 4-2-4. And that's quite positive, I thought, at home as well. I don't know if I'd expect to see that away. But yeah, it seemed to really work because it meant when they were aiming into the box and trying to create chances, the Watford defence couldn't just mark for Potnick out of the game.
Yeah, it's putting all the players on the back line, isn't it?
Yeah, but it also, when I said we're going into these wide areas and then getting nullified, they couldn't overcommit to the wide areas defensively because they had 2 players to mark in the middle.
Yeah.
Who were always up on the line. They were always up on the defensive line, occupying the 2 centre-backs, if you like, which meant both wingers had their wing-back exposed. And we actually saw some results out of that and made some chances. And Potnick probably should have scored. If he was a little bit more alert with his run into the box, it was, look, not trying to criticise him of being a bit petty and pedantic with this, right? But Peart-Harris did a really good job. I think he done someone on the right. He flicked the ball on, ran past. It was a good bit of skill by him. And he played a really good low ball, curling low ball across the box. And Potnick, like Jerry Yates had a lot of criticism last season for not throwing his body at these sort of crosses. Potnick did, but he just couldn't get there.
Yeah.
Maybe he needed that extra yard. Maybe it's the mental game fitness as well. Maybe that's not quite there because of his lack of game time this season, and that will come now he's getting a run in the team. But yeah, that was so close to being a goal. Probably could have been a goal. And yeah, we definitely deserve to be more than 1-0 in this game. And I know we've said that before this season. And it is kind of the same old in the fact that we didn't get over the line and get more goals. But at this point, I don't think it matters considering the run we've been on. I just think we needed to stop the drought. And I know we did that against Oxford, but it was important to back it up at home. I think I mentioned that to you guys as well in text when we were talking about it. And they did a really good, convincing job of doing it here, and it never looked under threat. In all honesty, it didn't. So, fair play. I think he started answering some of the questions. You've got to say the jury's still out because you've got to do it over a longer period of time. But I'm acknowledging the right direction, definitely making good decisions and trying new things. Another thing I picked up on, we're trying a few more diagonal balls from right back or left back or right centre back, left centre back across to the opposite wing. Kind of like what Wales used to do under Chris Coleman.
Yeah.
I haven't seen that earlier this season that much, but it's definitely allowing us to get the ball into the wing position where the space might be quicker to allow them then to be more dangerous.
And the thing is, we got Darling on his right foot and Grimes particularly on his left foot, so we have got the players to try it, like you say. And it just mixes it up a little bit. Like you say, we did become extremely one-dimensional, so anything like that where it just make the back line think differently about what we could do, it does just create more possibilities for us.
Yeah. And look, you probably see some clips of this game. I think there's been a few circulating around on Twitter this week of us just playing good football, good attacking football, flick-ons, flair, passes around the corner, all no look back, like all that sort of stuff, switching it from side of the pitch to the other side, like just because we can. Really accurate pass. There's a guy in space just going to ping it across to him and keeping the ball. And then going forward after doing those things and either winning an attacking set piece or like making a chance. And that's the sort of positive football that people like this style of play because it looks nice. When we're not creating chances, it can get boring. I called it out this season already. But when it works, that's when it works, and that's when it looks good. It works really well. It's really good to watch. And fair play, that's probably the best performance I've seen all season. It's definitely the best I've seen Ronald play all season. And it's definitely the best I've seen Myles Peart-Harris play. You know, he's only been here this season, but someone that we were like, oh, I don't know, is that a way? Is he good enough and all this? Like, Lee's not here today. As much as I've criticised this season and Luke Williams generally, Lee was criticised in the front four, wasn't he, quite a lot, saying they weren't good enough. And we had a bit of a discussion about it. I wasn't quite convinced it was necessarily the players. I think they were underperforming, but I was more focused on the tactics. He was convinced on the players. Maybe they've kind of shown here they have got something. And I'm not saying he's wrong at all. Again, it needs to be over a longer sample size for that. But maybe there's some signs there that these players can do more. And I'm sure Lee would love to eat his words as well anyway. But they need to do it every week now, don't they, really? Not just the one-off. And
yeah. And I guess the one thing we do forget as well, obviously, we've signed a few people coming in from overseas. They're adapting to a new language and culture as well as adapting to a new football team. But also, the Potnick, Peart-Harris, Franco, Bianchini when he's on the pitch. And Ji-Sung, I know he's injured now. A lot of the players we did bring in outfield, they were attacking players. So it's like twofold. You know what I mean? It's like double the problem in terms of adapting all at once. So hopefully, the longer time goes on, the longer they'll learn to play with each other. And also, it's only really Peart-Harris we're losing in terms of loans. So if they do gel, we're not going to have the rug pulled out from us under the summer necessarily, are we, in terms of this area of the pitch.
Where did we get him from again? Was it Brentford?
Yeah.
I mean, just he might be one that comes available later down the line. I don't know whether he makes it at Brentford.
Yeah,
but you never know, do you? Like,
wait and see. It's too early to assess. Would we even want him back?
No,
yeah.
But like Bashir Humphreys as well. I'm not saying I would have wanted him back, but when we signed him on loan a year ago, I wouldn't have thought he would have gone to Burnley on a transfer move. He's just been called up to England. You know what I mean? Like, he's just got to the England camp, and now he's come on here on loan. It was all there to like, he's got a future Chelsea career here, and then a year later he's been signed on a permanent by Burnley in the Championship. So
yeah, for big money as well, bigger money than I thought he was worth, if I'm honest with you. But yeah, it was like 12 mil they paid for him, wasn't it?
Yeah. So I mean, how much did Patino go for?
$1 mil.
But that's the other end, isn't it? Where like,
yeah.
And both probably had equally disappointing seasons.
I'd be interested to see, is he actually playing Patino, to be honest with you. I'm going to have a look now.
And considering where he's being linked to as well, it just shows that sometimes these wonder kids tipped for stardom just don't, and you've got to be there to take the opportunity when they come available for a cup price. That's what I'm trying to say, really.
He's had 2 appearances off the bench, total in 52 minutes. He's stayed on the bench for the rest of the game so far. And that's La Liga second division, I should point out.
And how many games has he been on the bench for?
9.
Okay, yeah, that's not great, is it?
It's a very sideways move as well. Championship to La Liga second. Yeah,
there we go. Anything else to say on this game then?
2xG. I just saw it.
I mean, I think we should have scored more than one goal. I think we were what I've said in the past. We won 1-0 and we just didn't really create that many chances. It was better. It was definitely better. We should have scored another goal. 100% should have scored another goal. Some of the decision making wasn't the best, but I'd expect that. You know, we're in Championship. You're going to get that sometimes. But I just want them trying and having a go. And they were like Ronald was taking people on again. I haven't seen that for ages. He was taking players on, and he was successfully doing it as well. So like he was getting past them, and it wasn't just running past them, like flicking the ball past them, running. He was trying to do it with some skill sometimes, but actually being successful. Whereas I think in the last 5 to 8 matches, you just haven't been able to beat the man.
No, he is such a confidence player. I guess the last thing to, before we look at the score predictions, to sort of leave us with from this game is just sort of how nuts the Championship still is in terms of how close everyone is together. So
Yeah,
we
for
were
the table.
we were very nearly in the relegation zone before these two games most recently. We're now up to 9th on 19. If you look at 22nd Plymouth, they're on 15 points. So we're in 9th place in the table after 14.
Yeah, and they won. They won this week as well.
Yeah. So we're 9th in the table after 14 games, but we're only 4 points above 22nd in the relegation zone.
It was
QPR
like
and
a last
Portsmouth.
season a bit as well, I think, as well.
Yeah. QPR and Portsmouth are becoming a bit more cut adrift. But we saw with Sheffield Wednesday last year how easily and how quickly that can drastically change if you get the right appointment in the right players or whatever. But yeah, nice to see us so high up the table somehow. It's crazy, really, when you think of the season we've had.
Yeah, and if you look at the form of the teams around us as well, like no one's really on Millwall are the form team, and they.
Yeah, and we saw firsthand they're not that good. They weren't against us anyway, but they did just beat us. Did they just beat? I want to say Burnley 1-0.
Yeah, they and Leeds as well, haven't they?
Oh yeah, it's just
They
crazy.
beat Leeds 1-0 as well. Leeds' last game, lost 1-0 to Millwall.
You look at West Brom, and we said at the start of the season, especially after they played against us so well, they're going to be flying. They're not like losing, but 5 draws in a row. It's quite rare.
West Brom.
Yeah, quite rare for any team.
Yeah, that is rare, but then you think that's not a bad. But if that's your slump,
yeah, it's a bit early to be having a slump after they're doing so well. I guess is all I'm saying. Maybe.
Yeah, but they're all right. Like if they win tonight, they go into 24 points and they're 6 points off the lead, and they've just drawn 5 games.
Maybe they didn't even deserve to draw the 5 games. Maybe they deserve to have a couple of wins, and they don't know. I'm just looking at results rather than actually watching the games. But
they've only conceded 8 goals as well, so
we've only conceded 9.
Yeah, but I'm saying they had all them draws, I guess, and they they just obviously clearly haven't scored, which perhaps it's another team like us a little bit. It's interesting, isn't it? The teams that are up there, they do. Burnley, apparently they were calling for Scott Parker's head. Obviously, we've got them next. They're playing right now. That's why they're highlighted in red here. They are currently drawing with West Brom, it looks like, because it's highlighted there. I'm long kicked off, though, is it? But yeah, they're all calling for Scott Parker's head, apparently, because by all accounts, they are literally in the same boat as us, where take the first 2 games away. They can't score a goal for love nor money, but they're not even creating chances. I think they went 1-0 down against Millwall, and apparently after they went 1-0 down, they had a 0.2 XG. That's what I was being told in the preview. So that's their frustrations. But I think one of the big things being highlighted is Scott Parker had Solanke, and he had, where else was he? Mitrovic, was it, at Fulham?
Yeah, he always had banging players.
And he doesn't have someone like that right now.
The squad they have, they still should be creating tons of chances. On paper, they should be a really fun.
I didn't realise, though, they sold like 10 players in the last week before deadline day. So when I don't know if you saw them on TV against Luton in the first game, I thought they looked really good.
Yeah, they did.
They won that quite comfortably, yeah. But since that game, a lot of the players that started have been sold, which I think is something I didn't realise until today when I spoke to the podcast. But that perhaps is having an impact on what's going on there. So why they've slowed down a bit.
Don't write this off, I guess, is what you're saying.
Yeah, well, we'll see if we can get anything there. I went on the podcast and I predicted 1-1.
Right.
Is that what I said to you? Is that what I said to you?
Yeah, you said 1-1.
Okay.
Yeah.
I just want to make sure it's consistent because I'll kick myself if one of them's right and one of them's not. Yeah, we can do predictions now. I just want to say Cardiff's momentum's been halted with a 1-0 defeat to Luton. So
I think they're going to be very tough. They're even out of the relegation zone, to be honest with you, after the start they had. What was it, 7 games, 1 draw, 6 losses?
You think they...
I think they're going to be chuffed just to be out of the relegation zone after the start.
No, they are. I mean, they sacked the manager and they had the new manager both, didn't they? So maybe that's stabilising now and they'll be back to fighting.
You can only hope, eh?
Replace them with Wrexham next season. That's me getting carried away. We were looking at it 2 weeks ago. Well, a week ago. It's like 1 point ahead of them. That's all fine now. With 4 points, they're miles away. Ask us next week when they're like on a doorstep again. Yeah, let's look at predictions then. Go on.
So I've shared it already, so just need to... Yeah, there we are. Right, okay. So got to backtrack 3 games here. So Millwall... Lee went 2-0 to the Swans. Luke went 1-0 to the Swans. I went 0-0. And I'm going to use the Luke line here. I should have been right. But no, it was 1-0 to Millwall, so not a single one of us picking up any points there. Next one, Oxford. We all forgot. Well, actually, I genuinely predicted 0-0. Luke and Lee didn't actually. None of us remember to send each other our predictions.
Yeah, we were busy, unfortunately, but
So
we
we
missed that
had
one.
to just write off that week. It is what it is. Watford, Lee went 2-2. That came out of nowhere. High scoring prediction. I went
I know, 1
0-0.
win, and then all of a sudden he's like, "Oh, Swans are scoring all the
Yeah.
goals." Sorry,
I went 0-0, but obviously correct score was 1-0, which Luke got spot on. So this is how quickly this changes. Luke was dead last with the points
look,
all of a sudden.
I've been close. I've been close for many games. One of them was going to come in. Now I've got a streak in me.
All of a sudden, it's 17 to me, 13 to Lee, 11 to Luke. Very, very close all of a sudden.
You
And
wait till
now,
the Swans draw 1 over Burnley. Now you'll be worried.
so yeah, you're going 1-1. We have to pester Lee before Sunday to get the prediction out of him.
It's like
So we have to
Super
leave it.
Six, isn't it? If you don't get it in, it's tough.
Yeah. Oh yeah, he'd have to forfeit it this time around, wouldn't he?
Yeah.
What do I normally I always have these
Who
predictions ready.
prioritizes work instead of coming on the podcast? Like, come on.
Terrible. Imagine having a life.
I know.
Yeah, I'm gonna go 1-0 Burnley. I know we played well, but predicting us to lose so far this season has got me into first in this leaderboard, and also makes me feel better when we do lose because at least I got something going for me. So yeah, 1-0 Burnley.
Classic betting sort of algorithm. But yeah, well, I hope you're wrong, Ben.
So do I.
Reasons.
So do I.
We'll see how that goes. Anything else to discuss this week? Ollie Cooper's obviously injured. We have touched on that already.
No, I think we're just let's leave it in a good mood because normally when we think of something else to discuss, it's bad news, isn't it? So back-to-back wins. Let's hope we can make it 3 in a row.
Yeah, I just haven't looked if there's any news that we've missed. I haven't seen anything pop up. There's something here about Oxford fee that we might benefit from.
Oxford fee.
Just having a check of player, I think. Something about Bianchini. I'll have a look into it. If there's anything interesting, we'll discuss it next time. I don't think there's anything. I think it's one of them throwaway articles that they haven't got any news. They're just chucking out there.
Fair.
Nothing of note. Okay, well, there's international break next week, isn't it? So I guess we'll have another week off and then come back. Maybe we'll have some Wales stuff to discuss. Who are they playing?
Wales? That's a good question. I think it's Iceland and Turkey. I'll have a look now.
Big games, though, aren't they? Like, in terms of their chances of going through here. I do think they made it tough for themselves when they conceded a goal in the last game.
Yeah, with Turkey away, Iceland at home. I think we basically need to beat Turkey to finish top of the group, I want to say. Let's have a look. Currently, it's Turkey on 10 points, Wales on 8, Iceland on 4, with 2 games to go.
I think we need to win them both.
Yeah, the Iceland winner obviously is a must. You're relying on Iceland or Montenegro to take something off of Turkey.
Which game's first?
Turkey game's first.
Right, so you've got to beat Turkey and then you go ahead of them. But then who Turkey play in the second game? I'm sure it's Montenegro.
Oh, if it is, then that makes it more difficult, doesn't it? It is. It is away, so they could spring a surprise Montenegro. You never know.
Trying to be positive. I think we've got to win them both. That's the bottom line.
Yeah, probably.
That's for me. It's the only. That's how you finish top. You win them both.
Thing is, we're unbeaten.
It's not like if we don't do it, we don't like.
Yeah,
it's not end of the world.
I'm enjoying watching us play for once. It's Nations League. It's not like it's automatic qualifying. It is good though because if we have an incentive to win League B. If we win League B, go up to League A. I think we guaranteed a playoff spot when it comes to the next Euro qualifiers. So, or World Cup maybe. Sorry,
I don't really know the new system.
Yeah,
they're changing everything now, and Champions League, Nations League, like it's all weird.
It still confuses me. It stands us in good stead. Point being, we definitely want to win the League B and go up to League A.
Yeah, definitely. Well, we'll see. We'll catch up about it when this will happen, I'm sure. But other than that, thanks, Ben. Enjoy the rest of your evening. And as always, thanks for listening or watching. Be sure to leave any comments about anything we discussed. What's your thoughts right now about the Swans situation? Do you feel a little bit better after the last 2 wins? Or do you still have any underlying concerns that maybe you're not quite convinced of yet? But let us know in the comments below. Leave a like if you did enjoy the video. It really does help support us. And I think there's like 40% of people or 50% of people who watch who are still not subscribed. So I'd appreciate it if you can also click the subscribe button. Really want to get to 1,000 as soon as we can. kind of just unlocks a lot more features for us on YouTube. So yeah, appreciate all of your support as always, and we shall see you in the next video. So thank you very much.
In a bit.